Welcome to the Goud Crowd Internet Radio Show. We have a very exciting show today. We're going to actually have a couple of guests come on. First, we'll have Representative Tyler Clancy out of Provo. He's in District 60, and he's going to talk about some of his proposals. I think these are actually aimed at battling homelessness. The specific bills haven't been released yet, but some of the proposals have come out. One of them deals with needle exchanges in Utah, and his plan is to actually limit those needle exchanges so that you could get one new needle for one old needle. And currently, apparently, they're giving out up to 10 needles for every needle that somebody brings in. So we should have a really good discussion with him. You should be able to call in. I'm just waiting for my producer to get here, but so we'll have the open phone lines, and you can ask questions as well. I have some questions, but he was very open. So he actually said he's happy to answer any questions that people have, which I appreciate. I actually think we have a lot of elected officials in Utah who are not willing to answer any questions that people bring to them, which is why you don't see a lot of town halls or any sort of open forum where normal people can just show up and ask them questions. I think a lot of them are afraid of that. So I give him credit. He's actually willing to answer whatever question come up with. Our second piece will be, we'll have Carolyn Phippen on. Right, so Tyler Clancy will be here from 5:15 to about 5:40, 5:45. And then Carolyn Phippen will be on starting at 5:45. So in that case, we will actually talk about what happened last Thursday at the the Republican Women's Club of Salt Lake City, I think is what it's officially called, with their annual meeting where they elected new officers and apparently added 110 new members, which means it had like a 10-fold increase in membership in one day. I think there's a lot of interesting pieces to that story. So she's going to come on, kind of tell us what happened. I think we'll have a couple other people who are there call in, and we'll also take questions from the audience on that, because I think, again, you probably have questions about what happened. Before we continue, I'm just going to share my business card because someone told me I should be doing this, and I'm not good at doing it. So here we go. So here's my business card. I have my own little law practice. So if you're looking for a lawyer, feel free to give me a call. There's all my information on there. My number is 385-237-7960. It feels weird actually doing something like that on a radio show because some people, there's some people that are ambulance chasers and they run around looking for business. I don't do that as much. I'm more of a word of mouth guy. But if you have legal needs, I do a broad range of legal services, whether it's litigation, personal injury lawsuits. If you are a small company or a corporation, you're looking for outside general counsel services, I do those as well. So give me a call. Okay, now let's dive into this, because before anybody comes on, I wanted to show you guys this video, which a lot of you have probably already seen, but I think it's worth seeing again. So let's get this up and running here. And for those of you who haven't seen it, I just want to make sure that you see it before Carolyn comes on, so you understand maybe what happened. So let's hold it. Okay, let me share my screen again. Oops, okay, hold on. Okay, here we go.
I've watched you do that. I've watched you touch women. We need to go find the manager. I've watched you do it.
On the bylaws and organization.
In case you don't know, that's a biological man that is talking right now.
It stands, and so it does not.
But to change bylaws, you have to have a vote
It's
and a
not.
report.
And when your accounts for the year, one for pay, and it's like, oh, now it's retro.
Well, if you want to come in and sit down and participate in the meeting, I'm only going to read this once. I'm losing my voice already. trying to explain to a whole lot of what's going on and why, but also most people don't really want to listen. They want a certain outcome that is not going to happen. So with that, there we are. Take us to court. I'm prepared for this. The women's.
Are you a woman?
Club.
Are you?
Okay, I just want to say that is amazing that somebody actually asked that question. I'm surprised because in Utah, people tend to be a little bit, they're super nice. And so when I saw that somebody asked him if he's a woman, I was pleasantly surprised. I actually think we tend to indulge people when because what's happened here is unfortunate. I think he clearly has, I know him. And not super well, but I know him through politics because for a long time he was the parliamentarian for the Salt Lake County GOP, and I've only lived in Utah now for 4.5 years, so I think that he probably had already started transitioning by the time I met him. I didn't realize it though until 2022 when I met him, and it was very clear that he was becoming a woman or some version of a woman, whatever that is, and But I think part of what happens is that instead of people around, people going through these types of issues, being honest with them about it, then urging them to get the mental health help that they need, what we end up having is people indulging them in the mental health problems, and then we get a situation like this where someone goes down that path, and I don't think it actually solves any of the problems. I think it actually makes everything worse. And so it would have been better if people had been honest with him from the beginning and helped him become comfortable in his birth sex again.
A woman? A woman and a part of this club? Whoa, wait a minute. Yes, it does. Who are we taking to court? If we're taking to court women. Oh, and are you part of the club?
If you're on the list, then you can be credentialed. Please hurry, though, because we need. So you need to check with this one.
Okay.
Well, yeah, but I can't.
Good. How are you doing? This is insane.
Just give me 1 second. One second, people. I apologize. Okay. So you see what happened there, right? This is a women's group, and they had a man who is part of the group. So, and like again, I think his situation is very unfortunate because he has transitioned. And I'll just be honest with you, I have no idea if he's had, the full Monty or bottom surgery or whatever you want to call it. I actually don't know. I have my suspicions about it because I've met him more than most of you probably have, and so I have a sense about it. I will just say this though, I'm not really sure that he's a Republican anymore. He may have been a Republican at one time, but the reality is as he has gone down this path of transitioning, he has actually become pretty left-wing on issues that are where he opposes kind of some basic values that I think most Republicans have. For example, he supports giving children who are suffering from gender dysphoria puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and surgeries, which I think, our party is against those things. And the fact that he supports them means I don't really think he can be a part of the party. He supports allowing men into women's locker rooms and restrooms. Now, I'll be honest with you, our own legislature isn't actually as strong on this issue as they should be. But at least we have kind of a general agreement that that's not okay. But he supports that. And clearly, he supports boys playing girls sports, and clearly he supports men going into women's organizations. So I'm not really sure that he's a Republican anymore. I just think once you go down this path of becoming trans, you're not really going to be conservative. It's a very difficult line. It's a very difficult thing to balance the two things. So just give me one second. Okay, give me 1 second here. I'm just trying to communicate with my producer through text message. Yeah, one of the issues is this is kind of a small operation that's going on right now, and so sometimes there's a little bit of back and forth going on as we kind of work through this. But anyway, okay. So the point being here, but that's not the only man that they had in attendance. They also had, I think, you'll find out Carolyn hired a male parliamentarian as well, and then there's some third guy there who was wearing a baseball cap. That's all I know, and was also somehow involved in this. Okay. I need 1 second here. It turns out I guess I have to have people call my cell phone. We have a slight change in plans. So give me a second. Hopefully, as we become better at this, we'll have fewer technical issues. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so I got that, and then give me 1 second. I guess my producer can't make it. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, hopefully they'll call in. We'll see what happens. Keep having these technical issues. So anyway, the point is though, this is clearly what happened was a problem, but I don't think he's actually the problem, just so that's clear. He's more of kind of a representation of a bigger issue that happened here, and that is why was he even doing what he was doing, which is keeping new members from joining the group, which seems odd because from what I have gathered from talking to multiple people, the organization only had 10 members in as of just before this meeting. 10 members, that's it. And for comparison, like I talked about last week, in Washington County, they have a Republican women's group. That group has, I would say, it has a lot of members. I don't know the exact number, but I went to one event down there. It was a lunch, and I swear there were more than 100 people there, men and women. But it's very clear that they've become a very powerful force down in Washington County. And I think that having a group like that, look, we got a call. Okay, hold on. Let me just get this real quick. Hello? Hello? Oh, hold on.
Tyler.
Oh, hey, Tyler. Okay, thanks for calling in. I'm going to put you, I got to do this on speaker, so I'm going to hold you up to my speaker on my computer.
Oh, no problem.
Okay. Okay, so welcome to the show. This is we have Representative Tyler Clancy on. He represents District 60 in Utah County. So thanks for coming on today. We appreciate it.
That was my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. I wanted to, can you talk about, to start, can you talk about your proposal about the needle exchange? I think this is something that's caused a little bit of controversy online, and I'd be interested to hear maybe like what the exchange looks like now, and then what you're looking at doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the needle exchange bill that I'm working on is really part of a broader effort that I'm trying to make sure that our drug policy is all going the same direction. And that direction is towards recovery and treatment. Harm reduction, as you're well aware, is a public health tool and that people talk about as helping people stay alive or as healthy as possible until they're ready to get to treatment. So I've always been under the assumption that brought a dirty or used syringe as an IV drug user, that you could change that in and get one. So the idea is that it incentivizes people up litter, and it reduces bloodborne illness that come from injecting drugs. So hepatitis C and AIDS and things like that. That was really what I assumed the needle exchange program was. As you can imagine, for me as a skeptic, it was already kind of like speaking German. I don't really understand all of the, public health science behind it. But I was pretty surprised when I found out that some of these programs were what they're calling it is a 1-to-1 plus. And so how that's been described to me is you bring in one and you get up to 10 in return. So for me, the reason I was frustrated about it is that seemed to kind of fly in the face of picking up litter from discarded drug paraphernalia in our communities, in our parks, specifically in the capital city. And then B is, an exchange is the idea, well, they already have this. We're not giving, more drug paraphernalia to people who are, suffering with addiction. And that's really what frustrated me. So as part of this broader effort of reform effort, one of the things I've suggested is that we just make it a needle exchange. Well, that's what it should actually be. It's just 1-to-1. So that was a little bit of the background. That might have been too much information, but happy to answer any other questions about that as well and kind of where it's gone since then.
Yeah, because you've gotten criticism from both sides of the aisle on this one, right? So and let me just make sure I understand this. So, for example, there was an example in one of these news articles where someone brought in 60 needles, and she actually got She got 60 clean needles in exchange. If your program passed, would she bring in 60 needles and just get one needle in exchange?
The one that I saw on Channel 2 was the gal brought in 3 needles and she got 30. Mm-hmm. I would say if you bring in 3, you get 3. But for me, I think, and I've had great conversations with people, who said, well, why don't we just end it? Which I'm really just thinking that we need reform. I'm really open to everything. I'm kind of on a fact-finding mission right now. I've been visiting some of these places, talking to a lot of people in recovery, trying to learn about, what was it that helped them, make the transition and stuff like that. So that, I thought it was a pretty modest proposal. I didn't think it was too radical to just say, hey, if it's a needle exchange, it should just be an exchange. It shouldn't be a giveaway. I heard, the other thing I'm looking at as well is I believe that when the program passed, I believe it was 2016. It's either 2015 or 16. There was no public funding attached to it. From everything that I can tell, the Department of Health and Human Services has a harm reduction grant program, and they fund some of these programs. So for me, I also think that's a conversation we need to have as well, that maybe even if it's a public health tool, I don't know if this is something that we should be funding, especially when we think about the work on the enforcement angle that we're trying to do of trying to interdict, fentanyl and meth and other illegal narcotics in our community. So, I'm really, if there's anyone listening that has feedback, that has insight, thoughts on here, I'm all ears. I just want to make it better than where we're at today.
Okay. So the other piece of this is people on the right. So what you got, people on the left are saying they want to be able to, I guess the left, right. I don't know if it's left and right, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So there's some people say you should allow them to do the 10-for-1 exchange, because I think the idea is people probably, I don't know because I don't do this, but they probably do drugs together. And so if you don't have enough needles, you have a risk of people sharing. And then the people on the other side are saying we should just cut this off completely and stop it. So I guess, how do you address those two sides of it?
Yeah. I feel like the left, I'm having those debates right now. I've been in conversations. You can imagine my phone blew up from folks who really are passionate about these programs and telling me I was, very misguided. And then, I had some people who definitely more conservative saying, I didn't even know this was a thing. I didn't even know we did an exchange. That seems outrageous. I certainly think that there's something to be said that if we just eliminated, any opportunity for individuals using drugs to get clean needles, I certainly think that we see an uptick in hepatitis C and probably these bloodborne illnesses. But I think this is really what we're getting to the heart of, and I think a lot of people on the right maybe see this with a little more clear lens, just because, I think we see kind of the drug crisis through a different lens. But ultimately, the harm is what you're injecting yourself with, right? I mean, there's no safe methamphetamine use. There's no safe fentanyl use. And with fentanyl and opioids, the ultimate harm is death. And so that's really what I think the conversation from the right has been, and which is where I'm certainly engaged on, and what my proposal as a whole is trying to say, listen, these are tools, but this isn't the end result. The end result is stopping using drugs, stopping from harming yourself by injecting these, horrific chemicals into your body and ruining your life. So anything we can do to move towards that, I'm all about it.
Okay. So in some of the articles, they talked about some of the other proposals that seem to be a part of this package. I didn't know if you could talk about them. One of them I saw was a movement to ban, quote unquote, safe injection sites. I didn't even know that we had these in Utah, so I was surprised that we need to ban them. Can you talk about that?
Certainly. So I'm also unsure if we have them or not. I think there's people who it's kind of telling to me that there's people who say that we don't have them, so we don't need to prohibit them. But there's also people saying if you prohibit them, then you're putting people at risk. So, you know what I'm saying? For me, I think we need to put a clear line in the sand and say we're not going to give up the ship by allowing people to, as you said, quote unquote, these safe injection sites. I think the term that my legislation will use is called supervised consumption site. And we've seen this in places like Harlem. I think there's a couple in Seattle, and it's where people go and they inject, some sort of drugs or smoke drugs, usually meth and fentanyl, in front of like a emergency medical technician or a social worker, with the idea that if they overdose, they can rescue someone. And there's just two things quickly, I think, that just shows how backwards it is. One is we know that if someone's using fentanyl, they're using fentanyl multiple times a day, obviously, which becomes dozens of times a week, up to hundreds of times a month. So the idea that it would be safe or a life-saving measure to have someone watch you do drugs once is just not true. The data doesn't show it. And I've read the research. There's just not a statistically significant movement about this as a life-saving measure. And two, as you alluded to with your, quotation, there's no such thing as safe methamphetamine use. I mean, it's so bananas that we would want someone to go to a place and it's going to be in a poor neighborhood, it's going to be in an already impacted neighborhood in the state, and then use methamphetamine, and then they're going to go out into the community and burglarize cars and, continue on a path of destruction. That's absolutely insane. And I think it goes against not just conservative principles, but just common sense. So that's, to me, I think it's a clear line in the sand. And then the other thing too, right now, when a firefighter, police officer, EMT, or, other, first responder, when they go out and to an overdose and they use Narcan to reverse an overdose from opioids, the person just stands up and walks away, and we kind of pat ourselves on the back and say we did it. But we know that the behavior is still going to continue, that they're still in a very dangerous situation. So part of my legislation is we're going to try and equip first responders with treatment options and create kind of a best practices to say, when we go to these overdoses, we're not just going to bring you back to life and say see you later. We're going to try to connect you with resources at the moment, whether it's, hey, we can drop you off at a drug treatment place right now, or we could have someone come and pick you up. Just simple things like that I think maybe we've neglected or just glossed over the past couple of years, but the numbers are so staggering that I think it's a problem we can't ignore.
Yeah, I was just thinking on this safe, quote unquote, safe injection site, safe consumption site, is one of the arguments for it that you could offer those services as well. When the people come in to be able to use the facility, you could say, hey, we actually have treatment options. Have you seen any data about that?
So most harm reduction programs, whether it's a syringe exchange or like wound care, and then in Canada, I'm not familiar with the one in Harlem, or I think there's one in Philadelphia there was in Kensington. But the idea, that's what they'll always say is like, hey, this is an opportunity where we can create relationships, where if someone's ready to get treatment, they'll do so. But I mean, think about the kind of mental gymnastics it takes us to get there, to say someone's coming in to inject themselves with methamphetamine, and I'm going to hand them a piece of paper and say, hey, would you like to get treatment? I mean, you know what I'm saying? And so I think for us, it's like, we know just with human behavior that sometimes it takes pressure points to get to the point where someone realizes that they need help. And I think allowing, this decriminalization, we've seen it fail in Portland, we've seen it fail in San Francisco, we've seen the chaos in New York and Philadelphia's Kensington neighborhood. We've got to just really be clear line in the sand in Utah and say, we will not do that. We're not going that route.
Okay. The other proposal I saw was this idea of expanding the No by Name pilot from Weber County statewide. I saw in an article where you were discussing that. Can you talk a little bit about that proposal and I guess where you're going with that?
Certainly. Yeah. So I have two bills this session that I would say are kind of like my top two priorities. The first one, we mentioned a little bit, kind of the drug policy. And the second one is more focused on homeless services, making sure that our homeless shelters are safe and not havens for, disorder and chaos. And that's kind of where the No by Name falls in. So, 2-minute drill on the No by Name, and I'm happy to, answer wherever direction you want to go with it. But the biggest thing is that, we have all of these siloed systems. So, for example, someone might be, have active warrants. And so we see that as the criminal justice side. Someone might be experiencing, schizophrenia, and that's through the mental health side. And that same person might be addicted to methamphetamine, and so the public health. The idea with the No by Name is that we're spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on homeless services, and we're not seeing the progress that we want. The No by Name is a tool that we're trying to build that we can start to measure program success. So take, like, if I was, an individual who was moving through our homeless services system, and I was kind of, as I described those like layers upon layers of challenges, rather than just seeing me and as a homeless individual and saying, oh, well, we need more shelter. We need to build another shelter because Tyler is homeless. And, how many other people, whatever. Instead, we can say, well, actually, Tyler's been to the shelter, 4 or 5 times this month. He's had permanent supportive housing. He's had this, he's had that. What's actually going to help move him off the street? So really, I think it's long overdue that we have better data for accountability for our taxpayer dollars when it goes to homeless services. Because right now, we kind of just see it from one angle to say, oh, this person is homeless. That means we need more housing and more shelter, when the problem could be much more, I guess, complicated, if you will.
One of the concerns I saw about the data sharing aspect of this is, I guess, the idea that maybe a law enforcement person might get access to the person's health data or something else like that.
Yeah.
Are you having discussions about how to handle that?
Certainly. Yeah. I'm actually having some meetings this week about how to refine it. Really, I think of it like this, about from a privacy perspective. So let's say that you have a homeless individual who comes in contact with law enforcement. and that person has a warrant. Well, right now, the police officer has one option, and that's to take that person to jail. I think there's a needle to be thread to say there's a middle ground between knowing someone's personal health information and being able to say, oh, well, this person has signed a waiver that says they would like law enforcement to have this person's caseworker at, say, Wasatch Mental Health's contact information. So instead of just taking that person to jail, maybe you can call the caseworker with that person's consent and say, hey, listen, this is a situation. Yeah, it's 2 a.m. This person, maybe was trespassing or whatever, and they've got a warrant. Are there other options that we could do that could be more, effective in the long term? So I totally agree. And I think data privacy conversations are hard to have via, a newspaper interview or something because it's very granular. But that's really the overarching theme, is to just say, well, these people are already in the system. They're already receiving social services. They're already interacting with law enforcement. They're already interacting with, the healthcare system. Is there a way that we can better streamline these services rather than just kind of keeping the revolving door, on and on and on?
Okay. Yeah, and then there was one other proposal I thought was kind of interesting. I'm assuming this is part of the kind of homeless bill you're going to do, is the one that would strengthen the ability of private individuals to sue property owners who permit dangerous criminal activity on their property. I think that's part of your proposal. Like, the bill hasn't been released yet, but can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. So 2 things. One, there's an active lawsuit right now actually against the homeless shelter in the Ballpark neighborhood, basically making the claim that based on a failure of the providers in Salt Lake City to effectively, keep that area safe, that property has become kind of a haven, as I alluded to earlier, of crime and disorder. And they're not really having too much success because the standard is very high. And then the second thing is, like, whether it's cash only motels or what's commonly referred to, like, on the street, is like a trap house. So you have basically a drug trafficking operation will just set up shop for, let's just say, 2 to 3 weeks, either at a hotel or at a, short-term rental. And it's just extremely dangerous to the neighbors. It brings violence. It brings prostitution, drugs, overdoses, and just the chaos and disorder that I think has become far too common, specifically in the capital city. This is to give more teeth and to put people on notice, to say, one, to the cities who allow this, to say, you have an obligation to your citizens to, the most basic fundamental right that someone should be able to walk down the street without fear of being assaulted. And if you're not doing that, then the relief that we're seeking through this legislation would be a judge, being able to say, well, you need better lighting, you need better enforcement, you have to get your 911 response time down to a certain level. Things that we, like, really basic things, but unfortunately, I think we're just not seeing it, particularly in our capital city. And so that's really what we're trying to get to, is just to get more tools to the table to have people feel confident in living in safe communities.
Yeah, I think that one will actually have the biggest impact in Salt Lake County, and mainly because we have I think a more activist district attorney than you see maybe in other parts of the states.
Certainly. Yeah. And I think sadly, I think the Democratic Party and the left, however we want to address it, taking a very permissive approach to, crime and disorder, because we kind of, well, not we, but, the left sees the crime perpetrators as victims of whether it be capitalism or whatever ism. And that's just incongruent with reality. And you can argue all day about, root causes and challenges and what got someone here. But at the end of the day, if someone's, firing off rounds at a drive-by, if someone's assaulting someone on a UTA bus, if someone's smoking meth in broad daylight, Those are problems that any civilized society should immediately be able to stop. And I think that's really what we're trying to get at, is just set expectations that, in the state of Utah, we expect safe communities, and just set that as the expectation.
And then another issue, I'm kind of wondering if you're seeing this in the data, is there's a homeless shelter up in Ogden, and a friend of mine and we went up there. It's been a few months, and we gave out people blankets. So it must have been before it got warm in the spring. Okay. And there were a good number of people there that were clearly recent arrivals from outside the U.S. And I'm asking about this because they're adding to the already kind of heavy burden of homelessness in the state. Will there be any kind of effort to handle that or deal with it or prioritize Americans over people who are here illegally?
Well, definitely. So last year, one piece of legislation that passed was a prioritization for homeless resource center beds, and it was based on TANF eligibility, which is a precursor to TANF is citizenship. But I think the second thing is kind of like, one is the data that we have is so fragmented that, you or I could, guess, or based on just our experience and, conversations, maybe talking to people on the street, we might be able to see or observe that, maybe these people are, recently immigrated to America, temporary protected status, illegal immigrants, the whole litany that you're describing. But we also don't really collect great data, because right now there's a lot of anonymity when it comes to homeless services. And, I could just walk up to a homeless shelter and say, my name is, Timmy Smith, and I can receive services. So that's kind of goes back to the know by name, to be able to say, while still, respecting people's civil liberties and privacy, but we also need to know who's here, what type of homelessness people are experiencing, before we can just build on those efforts, if that makes sense. It's like, the example I always use is like a mother fleeing domestic violence with her children is going to need a different policy intervention than Tyler Clancy, who has been using meth for the last 6 or 7 years, and I'm also dealing with some mental health challenges. So, but until we can actually accurately measure that, everything we're doing spending-wise is kind of just throwing darts at a dartboard, kind of blind, and just saying, well, we need more shelter, we need more housing. So, and then I think obviously illegal immigration falls into that category of, that's a whole nother dynamic that if we can't even accurately measure it, we're never going to be able to wrap our arms around the scope of that challenge.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess that's all the time I have. This has been a pleasure. So I appreciate you coming on. And unfortunately, I can't take calls while you're on here because my producer is not here. So I can't do both at the same time. Okay. But if I get any feedback, I'll pass it along. I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you taking on tough issues all around, but I'm excited to hear what your listeners think and hear what you guys think. And obviously when the session begins and the bills, start to get numbered, I'm sure feedback will flow in as well. But I do think it's an important issue for everyone, not just the capital, city in Salt Lake County, but it's what we do there will reverberate across the state.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Representative Clancy. We appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. I hope you have a great rest of the night.
You too. Bye.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you have any suggestions for Representative Clancy, feel free to comment, or you can actually call me. So let me add it to my thing here. Since I thought I would have my producer, but I do not. So let me add my number so you guys can call in. Let's see here. Except I have to figure out how to do it. It's going to take me a second. I apologize. That's here. Okay. Go here. Okay. Okay. there's a number, 385-237-7960. You can call in. If you have any suggestions, feel free to comment. Feel free to send them to Representative Clancy yourself. The bills haven't been released yet, but I think some of the proposals he's talking about are pretty interesting. And I'll just apologize for the squeaking noise. I have a couple dogs, and my little dog, she doesn't like to be outside, but she does like to make noise in the house while I'm doing stuff. So, and the other, we should have Carolyn Phippen coming on in a few minutes. So just before we get there, I'll replay our little video. So for those of you who didn't see it, just to make sure that everybody is well aware of what this looked like. I think it'll context, right? So.
The manager. I've watched you do it.
I think my favorite part is we need to go find the manager. Find the manager. There you go.
On the bylaws and organization as it stands. And so it does not require.
But to change bylaws, you have to have a vote
It's
and a
not,
recording of the minutes.
ma'am, nobody changed the bylaws.
So then how can one person pay for their dues at the end of one year accounts for the year, one person pay, and it's like, oh, now it's retro.
Well, if you want to come in and sit down and participate in the meeting, I'm only going to read this once. I'm losing my voice already trying to explain to a whole lot of people what's going on and why, but also most people don't really want to listen. They want a certain outcome that is not going to happen today. So with that, there we are. Take us to court. I'm prepared for this.
Who? Who's us?
The women's.
Are you a woman?
I also think the person who's saying that is going to call in today. Go ahead. Let's keep going.
Are you a woman? Are you part of the? Are you a woman and a part of this club? Whoa, 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 whoa! Wait a minute. Yes, it does. Who are we taking to court? If we're taking to court women.
No, you would take the club.
Oh, and are you part of the club?
If you're on the list, then you can be credentialed. Please hurry, though, because we need. So you need to check with this one.
Good. How are you doing? This is insane.
A little video here. Let me stop sharing this screen. Okay, I'm putting on speaker. Okay, we got Carolyn Phippen. Welcome to the show, Carolyn.
Thanks for having me.
Well, first, congratulations on being elected the new president of it's a Republican Women's Club of Salt Lake City, right?
Yeah, well, they've been going by county, but it's registered with national as city. So we have to figure out what we're going to do with that. Their bylaws are under the county, and that's what the county name, and that's what they've been going by. So that's what more people know it by.
Okay. Do you want to? So I've already showed people the video of Jerry Brummett at the door, and kind of, explain. I've talked about his change over the past few years, but can you maybe walk us through what happened on last Thursday?
Yes. And I will start with something a few days prior, because I received, I'm going to go back a month, because I had attended the November meeting. And even prior to that, there were people who wanted to see change in this club. And I had been called and asked if I'd be willing to run as president. And there's a lot that can be done with this club. We have a lot of concerns. A lot of people have concerns about what they're seeing in Salt Lake County as far as after the last election. And so when I got a call saying, hey, look, would you be willing to do this? And here's why this matters. I said, sure, let's do it. Let's make a change there. And let's use this club to motivate and activate women throughout the county who are Republican and want to see more Republican voters and more Republican support. So said I would do it. I went to the next meeting, which was November's meeting, and was told that there really wasn't a way for me to pay online my dues. Like, I needed to have a check with me. And I'm sorry, but I don't carry checkbooks anymore. That's like 15, 20 years ago. So I didn't have one. And so they said, well, if you just bring a check to December's meeting, you're fine, knowing that I was planning to run in December because they had already been given my name. So everything's moving along. Then at that point, it was clear that I was planning to run. And then the week of last Tuesday, the election was on Thursday. Last Tuesday, I got a call from the state federation director and was told, you guys will not be allowed to join. And obviously then I can't run, but was told that, we should just do something different, that maybe they could start another club in my town and just give that to me. I'm like, what are you talking about? So I said, are you still holding, will elections still be held on Thursday? And the Salt Lake County Club will still be in place? Yes. Well, that's where I'm going. I will be there, as will all of these other people who want to support that club if there's new leadership. There was no interest in supporting the club with old leadership, which is why at the end of last year, when they had to file with National, there were only 10 members. So, and let me say too, in the spring, there were a number of new members who joined. And it was because there was supposed to be an election held. Apparently, last November, the election was supposed to be held. It didn't take place. So Lori, who's the president of it, said that she would do that in the spring. People showed up to join and support. Gloria Vindis was going to run. She's now one of my vice presidents. And they showed up, joined to support her, and the election was called off. And they were told that it would take place in November. So didn't then move to December. Okay, now we're to last Thursday. So I had said on Tuesday we were still showing up. Oh, let me say this. We were still showing up. And when I said, I was told in November by the vice president, I either had to bring a check, or if I wanted to pay, electronically, it would need to go to the president's personal Venmo account. And I didn't feel comfortable with that. And so when I said this to the woman over the state federation, she said, there's no need to tell you that. Like, of course, everyone knows we have a state federation Venmo. Lori could have just given you that. And she said that a couple times to me when that issue was brought up. But I was told anyone who wasn't already a member as of the previous Sunday would not be able to join or vote. And so I had asked by text for the bylaw showing that it didn't exist because it was being made up. And anyway, so I said, we'll be there. So before Thursday, I got the word out to people, hey, apparently there's a state Venmo, let's pay there, because I was told that there would have been no need for anybody to give me a personal Venmo because, of course, everyone knows there's a state Venmo. We could have just paid that. So I paid my dues on the state Venmo, as did a whole bunch of other people. All of those got refunded, and it looks like eventually, I've seen screenshots, it looks like eventually they were getting so inundated that the Venmo just got shut down, or at least stopped accepting payments. So we show up on Thursday knowing that they're going to try to keep us out. They've stopped accepting any payments and made it impossible for us to pay ahead of time. And we brought, though, our parliamentarian. So we hired a parliamentarian, had him review all the bylaws and advise with us on strategy. We wanted to make sure that everything at the meeting was done by the book because we planned on winning an election on Thursday. And so we wanted to make sure that it could be verified and everything was done appropriately. So we show up on Thursday, and it was, I was told that it was a minimum of 110 people who showed up, women. And I had one person tell me that they counted 130. Wow. Now, people were there for 2 hours before we finally were able to vote. So what happened is Jerry was at the door and said that we would not be allowed in, as well as there were 2 state vice presidents from other counties who are not even members of this club who were sent down to police the door as well. I was not, Kim, I can't wait till you talk to Kim about what went on in the room. I was not allowed in the room because they had refunded my dues. So I was not a member. I will say that there were people, there's one woman I know of, there are two women I know of who had proof of cleared payment that had never been refunded. One of them was from back in the spring, and they were also not allowed in because they were not on the list. That Jerry had been given a list, and those were the only women allowed in. So if you couldn't even dispute your right to vote as a member, even if you'd been a longtime member, if somehow you got left off that list, you weren't allowed in. There was no process to double check their records, take a look at your proof, and let you in. Which absolutely is out of line. So I will say this too, that Kathleen Anderson, who was the president of this group from 2010 to 2012, said that she actually just received a phone call from somebody saying, hey, you would be so good. You should run for president of this group. And her response was, I'm not a member. And they said, oh, no, you just come, pay your dues, and run. And she won. So this is the process that has been used within this club forever. And the rules were changed, of course, outside of the bylaws, which you cannot do. The membership has to approve any of those kinds of changes. So we get there, Jerry would not allow us in. And women were saying to me, like, do we even stay? And I said, stay. We have worked out some different parliamentary procedures that will take place. And it was at a restaurant. So we all sat down, ordered lunch, and waited until the appropriate time. And eventually there was because the president was not there, nor was the president of the Salt Lake Club was not there, nor was the secretary treasurer. So there was no one to take money. Apparently those are the only two authorized to take money, though they have not stuck with that rule in the past. And so what happened was somebody in the room motioned to start elections and to start them by electing a secretary treasurer. So that person was one of our people. And then they made a motion to pause the meeting, accept all the new members, and allow them to join and vote, which is what we did. But I will say this, there were enough supportive members that we didn't even need the vote. And in fact, let me take this back. There wasn't even an actual vote. It was by acclamation because what had occurred, and it would have occurred without even these new members, because the others got up and walked out of the meeting when they realized they weren't going to get their way and that the membership was against them. So Jerry, another woman who was running as president, who had I don't think she had any idea. They didn't tell her what was going on, just asked her if she would run. And she said, of course I will. And Sylvia Anderson. And then you had these two other people who were sent from other counties and serve on the state federation. And they all, and then the husband of one of them, they all just got up and walked out of the meeting. But we followed all proper procedure. The election took place, or at least the nominations were made, and it was unanimous. So we wouldn't have even needed to admit any new members except for those of us who were running. But regardless, we have a huge base of support. People have been reaching out to me nonstop on social media since last Thursday, asking how to join, how they can be helpful, what they can do. I had a man reach out to me. I've had a few men reach out to me, but one last night who lives in Missouri who said, I'm an associate member, which is a non-voting member of the club here near where I live. Would it be possible for me to join as an associate member of your club? So in other words, can I send you some dues and be supportive of your efforts? And of course.
That's really cool. I want to ask you about that question. So I've looked at the bylaws, and you only have two options, right? Either you're a man and you can be an associate member who can't vote, or you're a woman and you can be a full-fledged member. How are you going to handle the trans woman issue going forward? I know it looks like under previous leadership, they were admitting, at least they admitted Jerry as a member. Are you going to change that policy?
Yeah, that does need to be changed. We are happy to have anybody. If you are trans, come join our club, but you still are either male or female, and you need to be treated like other males or females. So only females can join as voting members. And there are even limitations placed on them if they belong to another club and they are a voting member of another club. They can only be an associate member of our club. And so, yeah, there's nothing wrong with having some of these restrictions that make sense. But of course, if you are a man, we need to treat you like a man. That's okay.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. The other part I thought, I don't, do you have a sense of why there was so much effort put into preventing people from joining the group? I saw your discussion with Kathleen, and she talked about how in the past, if you had not paid your dues, you could just pay your dues and you were good to go. And what I find interesting here is you said there were 10 members in the previous year, 110 or 130 women show up in a restaurant to join, and they're being turned away. I would think that you would be jumping for joy you had this many people showed up, and you would be collecting their dues as quickly as possible. And I just don't understand why. Yeah. So what do you think the motivation was for stopping that?
Yeah, I honestly think, just based on what I've seen, that there are, this is a weakness of the human condition, and we need to try to overcome it as individuals. And that is, we think we're right on our positions. And so too often in politics, people in positions of power don't want to empower at all those who don't agree with them or think like they do. We should be able to unify pretty well on Republican principles. This really should not be as difficult as it is in this state. And I welcome anybody who is a registered Republican, any woman as a registered Republican, to come and join with us. But it does say that in the bylaws that you have to be a woman, number one, and number two, a Republican woman, and number two, support like the efforts of the club, the reason that we're formed, the principles of the Republican Party, basically. And so those are my only expectations. And if you believe and agree with those things, then let's get to work to get more good, strong Republicans elected. I am absolutely a conservative, and everybody who knows me understands that. But if you are not a conservative, but you believe in the principles of the Republican Party, well, I'm not going to try to keep you out. I don't understand why this division is so necessary from the perspective of some people. But I actually think what we saw in this last election helps explain some of it, because I think it's becoming increasingly clear that those of us who want America First policies, which I believe conservatism and constitutionalism is America First, I think that people who want to see that those numbers are growing, or at least among the public generally, as they realize that's what they are, and they need to start paying attention more and being active more, because we almost lost it under this last presidency. And I think that people are becoming more aware. So I don't know. I think there are groups of people who have for a long time held power, political power, and it's also hard to just let that go. But I think the world is shifting. And again, this last election made that really clear, and we need more people to recognize that. But unfortunately, those in power usually don't recognize it until it's too late. But that's fortunate for us.
Yeah, I think you and I had spoken before. I've at least talked about it, that there is that Washington County Women's Republican club, and they're pretty vibrant. And when I went to one of their meetings, and there were more than 100 people in attendance, both men and women. But they're clearly having an impact, because it feels like Washington County is much more, maybe America first is the way to say it, than Salt Lake County, or maybe even Northern Utah in general. It's turned into and I wonder if that having a powerful women's Republican group helps that along, because those women are involved in policy making. I see them everywhere. And so do you have thoughts on that, and maybe how it'll impact how you govern at the Salt Lake County Women's Republican Group?
Yeah, I love that we don't have to start from scratch, right? Because we can look at what some of these other groups are doing. When I talked to the last president of this organization, and I think this predates her a little bit from my understanding, that this Salt Lake one is just a lunch club for women who like to come and talk about politics. That's not good enough anymore. And I love being able to look at what they have done in Washington County, what they've done in Utah County. So I actually was on a podcast earlier today with the president and vice president of the Washington County group. And Kim was on as well, and Michelle Tanner. It was her podcast. And you're right. They are everywhere. They are involved. They want to see our values preserved for their children and grandchildren. And that's really what it comes down to for a lot of us who are fighting this fight. And so I like being able to look at what they're doing and have done. And I plan to have more conversations with them as we get started. But I'll tell you, I want to see, we have so many people wanting to get involved. I want to see a bunch of committees, and we have young, vibrant, active people. I want to see a bunch of committees. I want to find out what people's priorities are and where and how we'll focus our efforts. We'll have big meetings like that, but I also expect that we'll have a lot of small ones where people who care about election integrity are having, quarterly meetings or monthly meetings, whatever works for them. And other people who want to do service within the community have other meetings. I have one woman who's joined with us who wants to be very active. She is Hispanic. She and her husband are both legal, and they are both from Mexico. They've been here. They're both citizens, obviously. And she has said she wants to help with recruiting. And, there are a lot of things. We can have a committee that just works on recruiting and finding events that we can go to share the word about what we're doing. I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me and said, what can I do to help you guys? I want to get involved. I had no idea that there was something like this in my own community. People understand the necessity, especially right now, of making changes, and they just don't know what to do. They're busy with their regular lives, which is a healthy thing. But when something like this comes up and they see an opportunity to get involved with like-minded people, they'll jump at it. And I think this just gives us a really big opening. And so as tough as this situation was last Thursday, unfortunately, it was made tough by people who care more about excluding and dividing than they do about uniting. But as much as that is unfortunate, it has actually been a really good thing for the club, because so many people are now aware of it and aware of what we're doing. I think we're going to see big increases in participation.
Yeah, it's interesting. You were talking about being able to go to these different events and have Republican women there representing. It kind of strikes me as what you see with the League of Women Voters. And I know they're supposed to be nonpartisan, but I think most of them are to the left. Yeah. They're wonderful people. So I'm not criticizing them, but I think they're very effective because they show up everywhere. They just register people to vote, and to see maybe like a Republican counterpoint could be very effective in terms of getting more Republicans excited in Salt Lake County.
Yeah, I totally agree. And because I think a lot of people, I guess it depends what area you're in, but in a lot of areas of Salt Lake, conservatives are those who are truly committed to Republican principles and platform. They're having a rough go these past few years in some areas, in a lot of areas of Salt Lake. And I think for them to see the momentum behind us and more people coming to the table and wanting to be involved is a good and healthy thing. I told a lot of these women, you know, it's really nice to have a win every once in a while, because that is what keeps us going.
Yeah, I want to ask you one about what I don't know. Did you see what Speaker Schultz said? And I want to add, before I say this, I do want to say this. I think he's actually supportive of the conservative view of the trans issue, because he did just give $120,000 to that PAC to publicize what the Democrats were doing. But the part of his comment that I thought was interesting is he was critical of the fight that actually happened. Like, we should, anytime Republicans are not unified, we're losing. And did you have any thoughts on that? Because I think what you said is true. Like, it's actually really inspirational when people stand up and they win. It makes everybody feel good.
Yeah. So here's the thing. And he has tried reaching me. We have texted. He has a lot going on, and a lot of it is not political. There's a lot going on, and for me as well. And so we have not, like, we briefly chatted, but have not had a chance to connect. I think he is very supportive. He reached out to me. I didn't even reach out to him. I've been too busy, right? I don't, how do I say this? Like, I know him very well. I know a lot of politicians really well. I didn't have a need to let any of them know what we were doing. We just did it, right? I don't need anyone's approval or anything. So I didn't even reach out to him, and he did to me last week. And I think it's pretty fair to say he was pretty excited about it. So I will say this. I think that was completely unfair. I really do. I'm so tired of us jumping on everyone for everything. And I think the establishment way of looking at it, and the way those of us who see corruption have been silenced into not speaking about it, is exactly that line that you said, right? Anytime these arguments are happening out in public, Republicans are losing. There wasn't an argument. There was one side of the rule of law and order, and that would be us. We followed proper process and procedure. And there would be another side that was attempting to protect, subjugate, and shut down the right of individuals to freely associate. Because we're talking even within the membership of the club. In that meeting, those people who are already approved members were told to sit down and shut up, basically. So there was bullying and attempts at manipulation that took place that whole time, and they did not come from us. So it wasn't an open fight. It was a group that was resisting unity. But he didn't know this. All he knew is what he saw, and I don't even know how much he saw. He heard something because he reached out to me, but it was a couple days later. And, they had an all-day caucus for the House on Thursday. They were probably pretty sequestered. I've been to those events. You don't even have time as the speaker to be looking at social media. So all I'm saying is, I just wish we would all give a little more grace. Call people out when they need to be called out. I have no problem with that. But understand that not everyone sees things the way that we do, or sometimes they just don't know what we know. And we lose opportunities to teach and to educate if we're not careful. And that's we need to treat people kindly. But more than that, or as much as that, we lose opportunities to bring people to our side when we unfairly denigrate them. I just don't think it's helpful. I'll tell you, did I say this at the beginning? There are women who hate each other who came out to support me. And I know, because I know, awesome. A bunch of these women, and there were a couple of them I was like, here's the deal. I don't really care. And they didn't bring it up. But there are a handful who've had political battles in the past, and those can be hard to get over, and sometimes you feel like you're treated unfairly or whatever, and I'm like, you're just gonna have to put on your big boy pants, and we're getting to work. And no one had a problem with that. That's the way we accomplish things. But if we're gonna be so critical of everyone all the time, we will never have the critical mass that we need to make these kinds of changes, because we will have isolated ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because, like I said, he's actually a good ally on a lot of issues. Even I don't agree with him on a lot of stuff, but I appreciate that I think he's pretty conservative. He's more conservative than the last speaker, and that's been great. I'm getting another call, but I don't know if I can pick this up. So just before I'll ask more questions, but if you want to call in, you can. And I'll just have to put you on a 3-way call with Carolyn. Carolyn, let me just check who this is. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Hello? Hello? No. Okay. Okay, I don't know who that was. Are you there? Hello? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry about that. I have no idea who that was. Okay. For the people out who are listening, if you want to call in and ask Carolyn questions, just call my number. It's 385-237-7960. It's at the bottom of the screen here. And I'll put you on a 3-way call like we were in high school. I don't know if I'm very good at it, but we'll give it a shot. Another question for you. Do you think that the social media actually helped with this, the publicity? Because this was going in real time especially on X. This thing was blowing up with videos, with posts, and just publicity about it. Not the mainstream media, just people, individual, I guess, journalists, you could call them, telling people what was going on.
Oh, yeah. I'm telling you, we had someone there who put out that video and it went viral, got picked up by libs of TikTok. I was told, I had a woman call me from Washington who was watching that while it was happening. She was watching X. She saw that go up. And in response to the video that went up by Higher Ground, she ended up calling the president of the National Federation, got her on the phone, and said, do you see what's happening? How is this happening in a women's club in Salt Lake City? And this was someone who doesn't even live here. She saw this on X and was able to reach that person who runs the National Federation because Higher Ground put that out.
Wow, that's amazing, because it really shows the power of just regular people to have an impact, right?
Yep. The world's changing. What is it? We are the media now.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I think there will be efforts. There already have been. We saw what happened in last election cycle, the Trump election cycle, these efforts to shut down. Well, no, it didn't happen in 2015-16 so much. It was 2020, wasn't it? When there were the efforts to shut down so many social media accounts and shut down our ability to speak, because the media, the internet is changing cultures, is changing society. Much of it is negative, unfortunately, but boy, the upside is unbelievable for the regular people. It gives us a power against what has always been controlled media by those in charge of a nation. Those days are just gone until they can figure out how to wrangle everyone again, like they did just a few years ago before Elon bought X.
Yeah. I'm so much happier with the way the world is today than 4 years ago. I am wondering, the other piece I thought was really interesting was the procedural, your strategy here. It was pretty genius to have people go in, have the treasurer's election first, and then open up membership again. Like, how did you guys come up with that strategy? And because I assume you thought about this beforehand.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. That was our parliamentarian. But I will tell you this. We didn't need to. We did follow that strategy, but because of the way the people who were who were attempting a coup against the membership, they didn't have the power to. There were too many members who opposed them. And so, yes, the strategy was, if nobody will take money, then the first election that needs to be suggested is the election for secretary treasurer. Then you have someone who can take money, right? Pause the meeting, admit the new members, allow them all to pay, they can come in and vote. But we didn't. So yes, we followed that procedure, but because the people who were trying to get in between the people and their right to choose their representative, because those people chose to walk out, we didn't even need that. Like we were able to use it, but we didn't even need it because the membership did not support the people that the state federation sent in to run the meeting. And Jerry, they did not support what they were doing. They were not following proper order on anything. Apparently, and Kim can tell you more about this, but apparently Jerry just sat down and started reading a written opinion he had that was his written parliamentary opinion that actually he's not a certified parliamentarian, and his opinion conflicted with the actual opinion of the parliamentarian, the official parliamentarian. So it was just, so the meeting was just him sitting there reading stuff, and the membership wanted to get to a vote, and they wanted to choose their chair to run the meeting because the president wasn't even there. So yeah, it was pretty clever though to say, look, if it comes down to it, here's what we do. And they did follow that procedure to have the treasurer elected so that money could be taken and then just move on from there. It was pretty ingenious. That was Kirby, our parliamentarian's idea.
I thought it was Kirby, because he's on the GOP state central committee. I honestly think he is a parliamentary genius. He just knows the rules so well inside and out, and knows Robert's rules so well. It's hard to go up against him, really.
So we made a good choice. And the funny thing is, you and I both know we are both conservatives. I don't always agree with what I don't always like what Kirby says or does, but it's because I want him to agree with me.
Yeah.
But I trust him I very much trust him to do what is right and appropriate. And that is what makes him a good parliamentarian. You're exactly right.
Yeah, no, I've lost against him multiple times because I don't understand Robert's rules as well as him, but I can respect that he knows those rules very well, and that I think he's a genius at it,
Yeah.
In terms of now that you have new leadership in place, is there going to be any sort of effort to go through any of the old books to make sure that any fees that were paid in the past were put into the accounts properly, or any sort of audits or anything like that?
Well, I do think we need to take a look at things just because of the fact that we have people who have proof of having joined and their names didn't show up on that list. That gives me really big cause for concern. I certainly hope that they weren't gaming the list, that it was just a bookkeeping error, but we will want to look at that. We'll have to. We have to look at that.
Yeah. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left here. I'm wondering if you could let us know what we should expect from the club going forward. You kind of gave us some ideas. Maybe like, when is the next meeting? Are you guys going to be involved in the legislative session? Do you think you'll have enough time to figure out where you guys want to have an impact, where you want to testify and things like that before the legislative session starts in January?
I think absolutely. Yes. I think a lot of women would love to be involved in that and would love to have some direction in how to do that and what to do. Absolutely. This is actually a really great time for all of this to occur with the new membership and everything, because I think that's one of the committees that we must have, and that is one that takes a look at that information, what's coming out of the legislature, and then we will take positions on some bills. If that, I need to make sure that that's permitted. This organization has not done that in the past, the Salt Lake one. My understanding is that Washington County does, so I'm assuming it's permitted. I need to talk to them about that further and make sure, just according to our status. I just have to make sure that's appropriate. I would love to, if that's something we can do. And we will plan to have a committee and discuss those bills and take positions if that's something we're able to.
Yeah. And then do you think that you guys would also get involved in Salt Lake County, like the county council, what they're doing? Because that's an area where I think there's not a lot of groups focused on it at all.
You're exactly right. That's a really good point. We're always thinking about the legislature, and we forget that the county affects our lives at least as much, if not more. And so yes, that's something we need to do. We probably ought to have somebody at all of their meetings.
Yeah. That's it's not a bad idea.
Because we're going to want to know what they're considering. And, I think we've all had enough and this is one of the things I talked about last Thursday. We have a budget at the county level that has gone from $1 billion to $2 billion in like 10 years. And that's unsustainable. And people have had enough. The taxpayer, those individuals who are paying that bill for this just out of control ramp up in county spending. By the way, the population that is under the county has shrunk during that time because more areas have become incorporated. So I would love to see an explanation for why that's necessary. And this impacts people's lives very significantly. And I think people have about had enough. They can't afford food. And I don't think that the affordability issue is going to get much better or any better in coming years, because the federal government has put us in a position where just paying interest on the debt is going to put us in a really tight spot. And I think more will be pushed down to state and county government consequently. And we need them to be smarter and better stewards of that money.
Yeah, to your point, voters in Salt Lake County actually voted down that jail bond. So they have shown that they actually don't want to pay more taxes. And so I think you're actually right on the nose with that.
Yeah. My understanding is that there will be some things that are gained to force more money for that.
I would not be surprised.
Yeah. In fact, I saw that on social media today. And I can't even remember where I saw it. It was just a couple of hours ago, where somebody said that what they're going to do is, or it already has taken place, I'm not sure, I couldn't tell from this post, that they'll disallow in the jail bunk beds. So then you can prove overcrowding, and we're all going to be forced to pony up the money that we said no to. And if that's the case, we need to vote out every single person on this council that's supportive of that. Garbage. Gaming the system to just I want to say enrich, but it's not enrich, but to continue taking from the poor to feed the monster of government. We're done.
Yeah. Okay. So when is your guys' next meeting so people can mark their calendars?
Great question. We actually need to set that up. For now, my assumption is that we will follow what they've done in the past, and that is the second Thursday of every month. So January 9th is what I am tentatively planning for. Okay.
Cool. Well, so everyone mark your calendars. That should be a fun meeting to go to. I don't think it'll be as exciting as your last one, though.
Yeah, I know. Here's a big problem, though. I think we have too many members to fit in our previous space where they've been meeting for decades. So we need to figure that out.
Yeah. Oh, it looks like, oh, she keeps, okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much for calling in, Carolyn. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Goud. Have a great night.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we got a call. Hold on. Let me call her back. Oh, wait, hold on. Okay. You are seeing live radio right now. Let me see if I can get my friend on the phone. Hello? Oh, wait, hold on. Hello? Hey. Okay, do you want to come on? Can I put you on speaker? Okay. Okay, so now we got Monica Wilbur on, and she was one of the people that was actually at the meeting. So we got another perspective as to what happened. So Monica, do you want to tell us about your experience on Thursday? I know that you had some interactions with Jerry, I think, that were kind of interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thanks for having me on and taking my call. Yeah, we were there on Thursday. As we walked in, the party was just getting started, and that was about noon. But there were already like a ton of women in that room, and there was a lot of commotion there up at the door. And a couple of women who had been there for a while were very upset, talking about how here's a man in a dress at the door of the meeting room and keeping the actual women out of the meeting. So all I could see was, just the frustration on their faces, which was absolutely justified. And so I took my phone up there and I started to record.
I have to say, I think the optics of this were just, it was, when I saw this video come out, it was like it was written for a sitcom. You just could not have written something any better than this from an optics perspective, and from kind of it's unbelievable that the president, the former president, thought that was a good way to start the meeting off like that, was to have a trans woman, or actually a man, like you said, a man in a dress, being the one to be at the door and being, the one keeping people out. I just thought that was really interesting.
Oh, you're not kidding. It almost felt like a really bad script. Just like you said, the optics were horrible. But in addition to that, I think there were a few women who were upset about another man in a baseball cap, and you can see him at the beginning of the video, who they said was kind of like grabbing women or touching women, putting his hands on them in some way as if to move them aside, or I don't know. At any rate, here we have a couple of men who are pushing women around at a women's club. So yeah, it didn't look good. And I wanted some answers, and I wanted to know, why do we have a dude in a dress who's basically telling all us women that we can't join the women's club, this Republican women's club? It made absolutely no sense.
And what is he a full-fledged or I guess was he? Because Carolyn said she's gonna make it so men have to be associate members and women can be full members. But was he a full-fledged member of the group? Did you get an answer to that question?
No, I have no idea on that one. And frankly, we're just tired. I think that there were a lot of women there, super conservative. I would say that was the bulk of the women there, women who have fought for very, conservative causes, restoring the flag, for protecting children in schools and education, fighting for, families, fighting for families. We're tired of it. I think we're tired of playing the game. And having to kind of accept the queering of our culture as normal. That's not conservative. That's like, that has nothing to do with our party platform. In fact, it's like indirect opposition to it. It's antithetical to it. Our party platform talks about, support for government based on a moral and spiritual foundation. And, that's, it's, to me, this whole idea of just like all this gender confusion that's going around. I just feel like that's one of the biggest things that kind of erodes at the families more than anything else right now. And it creates chaos for kids. So I just, not happy with that situation at all. I think if it's going to be a women's club, it should be a women's club. Call me old fashioned.
Yeah, that is very old-fashioned today. Actually,
I know, isn't that crazy, right? Women's club. I just kind of figure if you're going to put it in the name, it's nice to have our own spaces. We don't want to share our bathrooms with men. We have a law that allows that, which is crazy. And you're familiar with that, HB 257. So,
Very.
Why in the world? We're in Utah, for Pete's sake. And every time people hear these things, they go, Utah? Really? Really?
Well, I hope that with the new leadership, you guys will actually begin to, you've already been involved in this stuff in the past, but maybe if the group comes out and, for example, wants to tighten the law, HB 257, so that men can no longer, there's a categorical ban on men and women's locker rooms and bathrooms. That's what we had actually asked for. And what we got instead, so the people that are listening understand, is after a man gets gender confirmation surgery, which would be bottom surgery and an amended birth certificate, they can go and use the women's bathroom and locker room. But what I learned recently is they can actually get an amended birth certificate in Utah without actually getting bottom surgery. So it would be great if the Republican women's group went in there and started trying to get that law, so it's a categorical ban on men and women's locker rooms and bathrooms.
Well, and if I could just clarify one point on that, the bill itself, actually, it says, this is what a man is, this is what a woman is, men should use men's restrooms, women should use women's restrooms, but there's no explicit prohibition against a man using a woman's restroom and vice versa. And I mean, if you go to and this is in government restrooms, right? So what you said right there totally applies to the locker rooms, but still, that's still an uncomfortable thing. I just watched a video on X of this dude who identifies as a woman, and he's wearing I don't know, panties, I don't know, and this long shirt, and he set up a camera in a corner of the bathroom. And this wasn't there's no cameras allowed in bathrooms, but he set one up so he could record himself in this women's bathroom. And, according to the law, according to HB 257, I guess, voyeurism, he put the camera up, so he broke a law right there, but let's assume he didn't. And he was just in there, washing his hands, checking his hair, all the things that women do when they go into the bathroom. And the women who walked into that bathroom were like, what the crud? They're kind of giving him wide berth, and then they're walking way away from him to wash their hands. And, and for all I know, he could have met all the requirements of HB 257. It's super uncomfortable. And you don't even have to necessarily look like a woman to be a man to have those procedures and be in their locker rooms. And to be in their bathrooms, there's no explicit prohibition. You go to the U of U HB 257 frequently asked questions, you go to Utah Tech, you go to Weber State, and they all say, hey, am I able to use a gender designated room on campus that does not match my sex at birth? And the answer is yes. You may use a gender designated restroom for the gender identity in which you identify.
Yeah, no, thanks for clarifying that. You're right on that. It's the bathrooms are actually pretty much an open game. Which is insane. Yeah. And I've heard lots of stories about this. I know Nicolette Sheridan actually gave a great, during HB 257, she talked about walking into a women's bathroom. It's moving, so for people online, you should go listen to it. And she says there was a little girl in there, a guy walks in, full on, just like a dude. And obviously, I actually think part of the game here is they say, oh, do you want to be the genital police? But as the video shows, it's really obvious when the person is a man turning into a woman. There's very rare cases where they're what they would call clockable or passable. Most of them, it's pretty obvious. But she's in the bathroom. A guy walks in. The girl, I think she comes out of the stall. The girl goes into the stall, and the guy is standing there. She said he basically like opens the door for her to leave, and she's like, I didn't leave because I didn't know what would happen to that little girl if I left. I didn't know who that guy was and what he was waiting for, but I couldn't leave the bathroom while he was there. So
right, yeah, it's horrible, and yet our legislators passed this bill knowing that was the case, but they sold it to the public as some sort of women's bill of rights, which is insane. If you're letting men into women's restrooms, how is that at all supporting women's rights? You know, like, I think we just need to be honest with the public. The public can be very forgiving if you're just like straight up with them and say, yeah, you know what, this doesn't do what we hoped it did. We are going to fix it. Or they probably shouldn't even have sold it that way to begin with if they weren't like sincere. But I think they were trying to appease the LGBTQ, lobbyists here in Utah, the radical ones. You're familiar with them, and you know, you know what they kind of have. I think a lot of the legislature wrapped around their little finger because they do a lot of damage.
Yeah, they know me very well.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I mean, they've done it in the past, like. And really we have to restore the platform for these true conservatives who have legitimate concerns. Like, we're not just like petty fighting. This isn't like what Mike Schultz said, kind of like, oh, we're just having little fights. There's probably a little fault to go all around. It's not my fault. We're letting men into women's bathrooms and we're pretending like it's no big deal as long as they're not, being voyeuristic. It's a huge deal. I do not want a dude in my daughter's bathroom, period.
Yeah. I will say this, though. I actually think it might be worth trying to have a conversation with Speaker Schultz about it, because I think he agrees with us on the issue. Because, he funded that PAC, they're calling it an anti-trans PAC, whatever it is, but with $120,000 to go and publicize how the Democrats are radicals on this issue. And I just feel like if we went to him with or someone went to him and was like, here are some of the problems of the bills that have happened in the past. So like the bathroom, HB 257. There's that bill that allows people to change their sex on their birth certificate at 16. I would go back and either ban that, or if you're going to allow something like that to actually have, and it does not indicate that the birth certificate is amended. It looks like it's a fresh birth certificate, that it has to say it's amended. And there's a bunch of other laws we could go and fix like that. I wonder if you'd be open to it.
Well, you know what? I don't believe they're ignorant of what the bills do. The problem is I don't see a lot of movement up there. Like, they know the bills do these things, but when voices, like mine and others who dare to point out, like, this is happening, the emperor has no clothes, we get shut down really, really quickly. I know our Higher Ground account on X, when we started like pushing this bathroom stuff and saying it's out there, suddenly we get slapped with some sort of like, oh, you're presenting misinformation or stuff. It's all documented out there. It's not a surprise. It's there if you want to see it. And there are voices who are saying it if you're willing to hear it. But I think these are things that we should be able to come together. But I really hate, this idea that this is viewed as just kind of like petty, or it's just cat fighting, or I don't know what. But that's doing those good, honest people who see a problem and point it out, like, don't shoot the messenger. We're not the ones who passed that bill. You guys are. So fix it, just take the initiative and fix it. I would love to see that happen. I think a lot of Utahns would be happy to see it. There are a lot of people who don't even realize that, we allow this stuff that Nancy Mace is fighting in Washington, D.C., against the new transgender identifying legislator from, I believe, Vermont, like being in her bathroom and then she gets assaulted over it. I mean, this is our fight here in Utah. And it shouldn't be in Utah, of all places. Like, we should be the champions and we should be the ones leading the charge.
Yeah. I actually, that swagger that Nancy Mace is kind of, an attention-seeking. She likes attention a lot, but on this issue, I love what she's doing because there's just full-on swagger. It's unapologetic defense of women's spaces with no worry about the other side at all. And it just shows you, like, if you can be like that, I actually think we'd get the bills that you're talking about in Utah. We just don't have legislators, though, that feel comfortable being like that. Instead, we get legislators who cry about the bills when they get passed. So,
yeah, I mean, you know what? These are winning issues. They are pro-child, they are pro-family, they are pro-woman, and they are pro-man. There is like no part of it here that isn't a win for Utahns. And I do believe we need a little swagger out there. I know there are people who, give a lot of money to PACs. And some of that is just, you know how it goes in politics. That's political positioning. That's being able to kind of, get the image out there. But I'm tired of image politics, and I'm tired of like kind of the political posturing on these things. I think can we just get down to the basics, and can we just, just be honest with the public and do what's right, and, do what is right and let the consequence follow. I just think we can't sit there being afraid that, oh, somebody's going to sue. They sue at everything. They're super happy. You've seen that.
That's true. Yep.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's you know what? I think the time for that should be over. It's time. Really, we're done with platitude politics. And, the women that showed up to this Utah Republican Women's Club, they did not show up just so they could be props for fake conservatism. They want the real deal. And I think they're owed it.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for calling in. I appreciate it. It was great to hear your viewpoint.
Yeah, thanks, Goud. It was great. And we'll talk to you later.
Yep. Have a good night.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Okay, if anybody wants to call in, you should feel free to call in. It's 385-237-7960. My biggest fan, Percival, wants to know if I am worried about getting deported. The answer is no, Percival. I was born here. So I am a born and bred American. So I'd have nothing to worry about. You can feel free to report me to ICE or whatever it is. I don't really care because nothing they can do about me. Now, I thought if people want to call in, go ahead and call in. It's 385-237-70 if you have any comments. And then while we are waiting, though, I wanted to show you this because I just thought we need a little humor. This is just awful to watch, but let's see here. This is one of Governor Cox's best friends. So,
week's crumble cookies with me. First we have, hey caller, this week's crumble cookies with me. First we have breaking down barriers to housing people can afford near transit.
I mean, I don't know how people elect people like this into office, but okay, we'll just keep going.
Next we have cutting people's property taxes and income taxes. Really good. That's a 50 out of 10. Next we have free preschool and kindergarten for every Coloradan. That's the best so far. That's 1,000 out of 10. Next, we're putting politicians in charge of women's bodies. You know what? That's 0 out of 10. We're not even going to try that one.
Awful. I mean, first of all, no offense, but I don't think you should be eating cookies. So that's number one. But number two is, if you notice, he didn't mention like one of the biggest issues in his state, and that is Trenda Aragua taking over apartment buildings. So this guy is touted as if he is this fantastic libertarian Democrat governor, but on property rights, he allowed illegal alien criminal gangs to go and take over the apartment buildings in his state. Can you imagine having a piece of property in that state and what that looks like? Just nuts. I can't, I sometimes wonder what people are thinking. Okay. Well, so let me also give you guys this. This is, I know the big news is this whole drones thing in flying around New Jersey and what those are. I thought this was actually probably the best take on it because I sometimes think people don't realize that what this guy says is probably accurate. So here we go. This is Sean Davis. And he basically says that he knows what's going on with the drones and he will share it with you, and that his basic rule for every single weird issue that happens is the following: the US government was behind it and is lying to you to cover it up. And I think that is accurate. So, there's all these drones flying around. They claim that they don't know what they are, but they also know that they're not a threat to anybody, and that they don't need to shoot them down. And that one legislator claimed that they were coming from some mothership from Iran in the ocean, which is like, Iran can't even fire a missile accurately into Israel, which they're always trying, like they've done multiple times. Those missiles aren't accurate, but somehow they can create drones and a mothership and put it off the coast of the US and have all those drones flying around only at night in New Jersey. Like, that's an obvious not true thing. They should probably get a better quality legislator down there. So you got there's all these different things he brings up. Who killed JFK? The US government was behind it and is lying to you to cover it up. Accurate. How did the cartels manage to get so many drugs into and so much cash out of the US? The US government was behind it and is lying to you to cover it up. Accurate. Who let the 9/11 hijackers into the US? The US government was behind it and is lying to you to cover it up. That is also accurate. Now, I don't know if they let them in to do 9/11, so maybe that's a little bit of a stretch there. Why were there no WMDs in Iraq? Because there weren't any. But the US government was behind it and is lying for you to cover it up. And then finally, and we'll skip over some of these because there's a lot. Oh, this is a good one, actually. Why was the discussion of Hunter Biden's laptop banned in 2020? The US government was behind it and is lying to you to cover it up. I think that's accurate. Where did COVID originate? Everybody knows, China. But the US government was behind it and is lying to you to cover it up. It was funded by our government. And then what's going on with all those drones in the Northeast? The US government is behind it and is lying to you to cover it up. I think that's accurate. Okay, finally, I'm going to show you one other thing before we call it quits for the night. Again, you can call in if you want. I actually I had requested the number of driver's privileges cards that were given out by Utah in 2020 through 2024 so far, right? And they came back and they denied my request for a fee waiver. And they said they didn't have any documents that were responsive, but they would create one. But I had some people online say, well, will you ask them how much it would be? And so they said $35. I just want to say thank you. So a few people actually donated the money. So I was able to pay it and I got the numbers. Now, I haven't been able to do research on this, so I figured I'll just share it with you guys. I'll share it on here, and then I'll take a screenshot of this and put it online as well. Actually, I'll do that once I have more context, because I think this is a little bit, it doesn't fully make sense to me yet, and it's going to require a little bit of research. So let me show you what I got here. Let's see. I'm waiting for, okay. So what you can see here is that, and this is why I think this needs more research, is so we'll go with 2020, right? There's a total of 31,748 driver's privileges cards. For those of you who don't know, these are the driver's licenses that we issue for illegal aliens in Utah. So there were 379. I think this would be someone that lost their license. 1,646 new ones, and then 29,723 that are marked as renewals or lapsed. And so what you'll see though is as you go down, I would have expected the original number to start to jump dramatically, because we have had, under Joe Biden, we've had, 20 million plus illegal aliens trafficked into the US. I don't actually think this is an accidental thing. I think the federal government is actually funding the whole thing through nonprofits and the UN and stuff like that. So so I think we've actually had a lot more than, for example, 2020 would have been when Trump was in office, COVID. But then let's get down, it goes up a bit in 2021. So this is Biden starts opening the border, right? So you get 2,086 original ones, but that's only 400 more than in 2020. So that surprised me. And then you have 2022, 27, 23 original ones. And then it goes up in 2023 to 4,310. So I guess there's a jump, but I would have expected this jump to be bigger considering the volume of illegals that are coming into the US. And then so far in 2024, they've had 2,923 new original driver's privileges cards. So, and so the reason I need to do more research is I need to understand better maybe who is able to get who has to get a driver's privilege card versus who has to get a driver's license. And this is what I mean. When Biden imports people into the US, and that is what they're doing, they're importing people, what they actually, they give them a hearing date, and then they parole them into the US. And so technically it's a total abuse of the system, but it's considered they're legal until they have their hearing date. Now the hearing date could be 5 or 10 years or whatever from now, and they probably won't show up. And during that time, though, they'll be, taking jobs from Americans. They'll be doing all sorts of, there's a lot of criminal activity in the illegal alien communities. And that all will be going on during that time when they're technically considered legal because they've been paroled. And I'm wondering if people who are paroled are able to get regular driver's licenses, or do they have to get driver's privileges cards? So that's one thing I need to research. The other question I am wondering is if someone who's paroled has to get a driver's privileges card, then I think we need a better idea of how many people are actually here. And that's going to take getting data from different sources. So this is one source. Another source I wanted to look at, and I did a grammar request for this, but they said they didn't have the data, and I think I have to go and do it to a different agency. But I was trying to figure out how many EBT cards in Utah have been given to illegal aliens. I don't know if I'll be able to figure that out specifically because Tyler kind of talked about this, or sorry, Representative Clancy kind of talked about this during his interview, but that they don't necessarily track your immigration status when they're giving out all these different benefits, right? They don't do it for the homeless issue. I don't think they necessarily do it for the EBT cards either. But I saw a graphic out of Massachusetts where someone had gotten the information, and there was a massive spike in the number of EBT cards that were issued during the past few years as illegal aliens started to flood in. And I'm wondering if we would see something similar in Utah. So I probably need to go and turn in that grammar request again, but maybe target a different agency. I'm only one guy, so I only have so much time in the day, but that'll be one to try to get a better handle on the number. Because what I'm also wondering here, based on these numbers, is whether illegals are actually getting driver's privileges cards. I think there's a very strong possibility that they are not. And so if they're not getting them, maybe we don't even need this program, right? And I think I've heard people argue, when I went to my caucus, so this would have been in March or April, our precinct chair actually said he was pro giving out driver's privileges cards to illegal aliens because he thought that would make them drive better. But I drive on Utah streets, and I don't think having a driver's license means that you are a better driver, just based on my experience. Not sure that people here are great drivers. No offense to anyone that is not a good driver. Because just so you know, many of my friends will say that I am not a good driver. So anyway, but the point being that I wonder if maybe there's a lot of illegal aliens in Utah that are driving around without a driver's privilege card or a driver's license, which means they're illegally driving. Another question that I have, and I don't actually think I don't know if there's a way to answer this, is how many illegal aliens with these driver's privileges cards actually have auto insurance. I think I don't know if people have read about this, but there's a lot of instances where people actually, or auto insurance rates have been skyrocketing right across the country. And a big driver of that is the number of uninsured drivers getting into car accidents. And that's actually another illegal alien issue. They actually tend to get into more accidents. Because I think a lot of them, it's likely, and I can say this because, like my family came from India. And I don't know if anyone here has been to India, but if driving there is completely different than driving in the US. We drive at much higher speeds here, and we're more ordered. Like if you ever go to India, it is complete and utter chaos on the roads. I mean, there's like rickshaws, auto rickshaws, cars, semis, cows, stray dogs, everything that you could think of walking on the street is walking on the street. So it's a total mess. I think if you're coming here as one of these illegals, it's being trafficked into the US, you may not have ever driven in your home country at all. And so you come here, you're driving, you probably are going to be more accident prone than people that were born and brought up here that actually get I would say like probably 99% of Americans get licenses as soon as they can so they can start driving. So it's a very different culture. So I think anyway, like if there's a way to figure that out, that would be interesting. I don't know if maybe that would be doing a grammar request to find out if there's been more people pulled over who have not had auto insurance as they should. So, but anyway, I will do more research on this, hopefully before next week's show, because I'd like to just get a better handle on what these numbers mean. I might try to email the person back who sent it to me to see exactly what each of these data elements mean. So duplicate, I think I understand, but I'd want to make sure from them I understand what it is, original and renewal, so that we're just making sure. And my other question is this, so 31, 32, are these the total like full universe of driver's privileges cards, or is it just the number of driver's privileges cards issued in that year? So then you would add these up to get the cumulative number. I don't know the answer to that yet. That's something I'll also clarify as I move forward. So that's that. As I said, I will release more of this is a full data set they gave me, but I'll try to find out more information because, like I said, I didn't post it online yet because I just don't feel like it's super helpful at this point without more context, and I need to do some research on that context. And I'm just realizing that this actually says at the top here that this data only goes through August 6th of 2024. So 2024 is actually pretty low, right? At this 21,000 total, it's much lower than the other ones. So that means that we're missing 4 months of data on that. So I'm wondering if this will be higher than the previous year. Okay, well, we are at 1 minute, and I think that's all I got. I'll just say this: I think I'm gonna hold on doing the weekly rundown until the new year. I'm just a little bogged down in a bunch of work that pays me, so I gotta focus on that stuff. And it does take me a good amount of time to actually draft the weekly rundown. So if I have some time, as I get into the next couple of weeks here, I'll try to do some. But if I don't, you should expect it to start after the new year again. Next week we will be back, and I'll try to get more. And hopefully, I'll have a producer. It's a little bit more fun for me to do phone calls if you can like call into the show and then it comes through online. But I'll try to get my producer back. I don't know where he is. And then I wish you guys all, I guess I'll see you before Christmas. I'll be here before Christmas, right? Let me see. 1 second here. Sorry. Oh yeah. Okay. I'll be here Monday. So I will talk to y'all on Monday. If you guys have any, tips or suggestions, feel free to reach out and send them to me, and then we can report on them next week. I'll try to see if we can get more guests, because I will say it was really interesting to have both Representative Clancy and Carolyn Phippen on, but it might be hard because we're heading into the holiday season. But I will try to see if we can get more guests on. In the meantime, thank you for listening to the Goud.